Hey guys, so we all saw the bad news. The rumor came out, the leak came out, I guess you'd say, from basically Nintendo. I mean, it has to be Nintendo, right? And it says that the Switch is just going to be so underpowered. I don't know how it'll be able to even play Wii U games, guys. I mean, it's going to be 300 megahertz on portable, and it's in trouble. It's going to be a gigahertz at CPU clock speed across the board, portable and on the dock. And I don't know, what are they going to do? I don't know how they're going to put a game on this thing. It's over, guys. I think at this point we just need to move on from the Switch and look forward to the next Xbox or the next PS4, because there's no way this thing's going to compete. Are we serious right now? That's literally been the entire GameFAQs board, the entire NeoGAF board, and any other gaming source you could think of. Right now, everybody is like, the sky is falling because these rumored, oh my gosh, guys, again, it's rumors. Rumored specs came out about the clock speed of the Switch. And I thought we were done arguing about clock speeds a while ago. Like, this is something we would have been arguing about, oh my gosh, back with the Pentium 4 and when the Core 2 Duos came out, man, we fought for ages about clock speed, about how important it was. And after that, it really fell off because, honestly, clock speed started to matter less and less and less. And now we're to a point where we're fighting over, or we're doom and gloom over clock speeds that came out that, to me personally, make perfect sense. So here's the deal. Everyone came out and saw these rumored clock speeds from Eurogamer. Apparently, I guess a lot of people give Eurogamer and Digital Foundry a lot of slack when it comes to this stuff because they are, I guess, as legit as it gets for a leak, which I can kind of see that because they have reported stuff that at least makes sense and we're expecting to be announced as soon as January. Different leaked games, things like that. But I have a feeling that their big source is basing a lot of this stuff off of a dev kit. And the thing about dev kits, they're not exactly the same as the retail unit. They're usually different. They're either similar to the point where you can easily port from one to the other, or they are basically overpowered. In this case, I don't think they're overpowered. I think they're more similar. And a Maxwell X1 is very similar even to a Pascal chip. So it's very possible that they just have Maxwell X1s right now because they were available. And they're saying basically, hey, you're going to be able to port this over, no problem. We don't know, guys. We just don't know the chip that's in the Switch. As much as we all want to think we do, we don't. We have no idea what chip is in this system. We seem to think it's an X1. We seem to think it's a Maxwell-based chip. But I can tell you now, Nvidia is making a custom chip. There's no way they're just moving. They wouldn't spend hundreds of engineering years to just take an X1 chip, move it over to a board, and then drop it on and say, there we go, we're good. So what we're seeing right now is there's a heavily customized chip that is definitely being developed, because as much as people want to confirm in some way that it is a Maxwell chip, no one knows. It's all rumor. It's all speculation. It's all just hope for the best. I hope this is right. Put it out in the news so we get clicks, kind of thing. And the big thing people are talking about is the Switch is not using its max clock on the X1. Again, they believe it's the X1, which you're allowed to believe what you want, but we don't know. Until Nintendo or Nvidia come out with their own little spec sheet and say, this is what's in it, this is what it is, I will take everything I look at and say, well, maybe. Maybe. There's always that possibility. But until I get it confirmed from the person making the chip or the person developing, obviously, the software or the hardware with Nintendo and Nvidia together, I won't take it as like gospel and confirmation until then. So what can we take from what we saw? Let's just pretend. Let's just completely pretend that we are looking at the clock speeds from the Switch. So according to them, it's going to be like 768 megahertz on the GPU side, and then when it downclocks coming off of the dock, which we knew it was going to downclock, I had in my mind not a significant downclock, but a downclock of some kind. Now, the downclock they're showing us is pretty drastic. It's about 307 or so megahertz. The other thing that kind of bothered me about this entire leak, guys, is how specific it is. It's very specific. And it almost seems like something that I guess would be sent to a developer or somebody working with it, but I don't know. That still seems odd that it's literally down to like 0.34 megahertz or whatever. It seems very, very specific for them to be leaking. If they have anyone on the inside, I just can't imagine someone in Nintendo. It's probably someone with a developer's kit. But again, let's put that to the side real quick. Let's talk about, like I said, the frequency that's running. So they said the actual CPU is running at 1 gigahertz, and honestly, that's fine. We still don't know the chip, so that could be great for all we know. And the fact that it's running 1 gigahertz across the board means that things like physics, AI, all that stuff will have parity across the board. So it will run the same AI when it's portable as compared to when it's on the dock. And that's perfect. That's what we really wanted. The thing that's going to change, though, is the GPU clock. And this makes a lot of sense, because what's going to change from what we believe, what's the one thing that's really going to change when it removes from the dock and becomes portable? Resolution. It's going to supposedly, as well as we can confirm, and honestly, if this makes any sense, it's basically telling us that yes, it is a 720p screen, which I think we all at this point have accepted that it's not going to be a 1080p screen. It makes no sense. It's a small enough screen to where 720 and 1080 will be diminishing returns if you really decide to do that. So 720p makes sense. Now, the difference here is creating a 1080p image and then creating a 720p image. So if we are creating a 720p image, that is seriously less than half the pixels needed for a 1080p image. And consider what we're seeing here. We're seeing a drop in GPU frequency that is more than half, and it's going to match the 720p image. There's really no need, guys, if we're trying to save battery here, there's no need to have a highly clocked GPU that is essentially overkill. They have their set, basically they have their target set. They want, this many frames at 720p on the go with this much battery life. All of that is set. So why do they need to have a very powerful GPU on the go if it's not going to make that much difference? Let's say everything's locked at 30 frames. Let's say we're all locked at 720p. What is the point in jamming a powerful GPU or increasing the clock rate from there if the battery will suffer? There's really no point. And I kind of noticed something. So somebody sent me the link to this, and the way I found out about it, somebody sent me from the Game Explain one, and I decided to start looking at some of the other videos that people were posting about this stuff. First, I read some of the articles people were doing, and then I started watching some of the videos. I watched Game Explain. You know what? They're good guys over there and everything. They report the stuff, and that's great. They're a good spot for that. They talk about news, and that's what they do. That's great. However, I noticed kind of a part of the video that really made me go, yeah, I can see that. That makes sense as to what's going on with the firestorm on the internet right now. So here's the clip that really made me go, ah.
And there is a lot of tech speak in here, and I will be the first to admit that I don't understand half of this stuff.
So right away, he basically says they don't know what everything means. And I'm starting to figure this out. Most of the people on these boards that are out there complaining have no idea what they're complaining about. There is a lot more to a chip, guys. I really cannot stress this enough. There is a lot more to a chip than just the frequency that it runs. Yes, you can do things like you can do math to figure out teraflop performance, compute performance, but even that, guys, does not mean everything. If it did, Nvidia's GTX 1060 would not match and outperform the RX 480 in most cases. I've said this example before because it is an awesome example. I mean, it really is. In this case, it's the Switch is using Nvidia, Xbox One, PS4 is using AMD and ATI, basically. And the teraflop performance between them is different. Nvidia seems to be able to get more performance out of their hardware. And that leads us into what I personally think is the biggest difference here and what's really going to make or break the Switch in terms of performance. And that is this custom API, low-level language, basically, that NVIDIA is developing specifically for the Switch. And what that's going to do is get a ton of optimization out of this chip to where people may look at the specs and say, wow, that's a weak piece of hardware, maybe, but then they start programming for it and realize, wow, this thing is heavily optimized and it's everything's set up perfectly for it to put out good frame rate with good graphics despite a lower teraflop rating. That's odd. It sounds like Nvidia is going big with their API settings here to make that work. Apple has been doing this forever with their iPads and their iPhones and heavily optimizing them for the operating system. The Shield TV, the reason people are confused right now is that it's not reaching the max frequency that the Shield TV is running. Keep in mind, though, the Shield TV is not heavily optimized with a low-level API running on a specific operating system. It's running on Android. It's almost like a computer running on Windows. For some reason, has to be more powerful by a good bit than, say, an Xbox One or PS4 to run the same game. That's because the Xbox One and the PS4 are set up specifically as game consoles. The Switch, I feel, is going to be even more optimized than the PS4 and the Xbox One, simply because Nvidia is spending more time with just Nintendo and just this system developing this API. And I still think the chip is heavily customized. I don't think we know much of anything about this chip. I don't think you can do a direct comparison to the X1 or even the P1 or the X2, whatever you want to call the next generation. I don't think you can do a direct comparison. I think they're using aspects and parts of different architecture and building a very custom chip. And we really won't know much about this. I can tell you now, in January, the last thing Nintendo will do is roll out a spec sheet because they know that may alienate part of their audience. They're trying to show us games in January. I would be shocked, and I mean this, I would be shocked if they came out and showed us any type of specs, anything. I'd be shocked. But don't freak out about these rumors, guys. I see it all the time. And you guys know I've made videos about how easy it is to believe this stuff. Okay, so let's say the frequency is really what they posted. Not the end of the world again. We still don't know enough about this chip and how it works, their low-level API. Wait for what the games look like. Wait to see how they run, and then make your judgment on it. If we show up in January and there's no third-party games and there's no plans to make third-party games, then panic. Then get worried, because that is what really hurt the Wii U. We can all agree about that. The Wii U was really hurt by no third-party support. If this happens, then yes, then the Switch is in trouble. But give them a chance. Don't starting firestorms on the internet about how bad it is because the frequency is 768 megahertz and 300 megahertz in portable mode. Because honestly, I want to say 95% of the people on there who are trying to start these rumors are either doing it on purpose and they just don't understand what they're talking about. I've seen some really funny postings online where they just don't know what they're doing. So take these rumors, guys, as just that, rumors. Until Nvidia come out and say, this is it, until one of us take it apart and reverse engineer it, get x-ray shots of the die, don't believe people. Even Eurogamer guys, be careful with them, especially when it comes to these specs. It's one thing if they're leaking games, because that's easy enough to look on a piece of paper in Nintendo or with their developers somewhere and say, oh, there's the game, it's being developed. It's another thing to say, these are the specs, and they start pulling information out of rumor to put this together, because everyone still believes it's just an off-the-shelf X1, and I don't believe that. I think it's a heavily customized chip. So be careful with rumors, guys. Don't worry about these frequencies. Even if they turn out to be true, there's so much more to this puzzle than just frequency. There is so much, seriously. We don't even know how many CUDA cores are in there. Everyone keeps throwing 256 around. It could be more. I mean, the die would have to be bigger. Or the chip would anyway, but it's possible. It's possible. And the other question to kind of leave this with, guys, if the frequency in portable mode, even in dock mode, is so low, even 768 is lower compared to the Android TV, and they needed that fan, why would this system need a fan? Think about that for a second. Why would the system need a fan if it's so underpowered? Because most of these chips can run passively at those frequencies. They can, and tablets have done that. So what is going on with this chip where they need a heatsink and active cooling? We saw it in the patents. We've seen the vents. We even kind of hear it on the Fallon show. So why would there need to be a fan in something that's severely underpowered? I don't think we know all the pieces to the puzzle, guys, and we won't know probably until somehow we find out in January, or we find out leading up to that, or we get it and then we figure it out. So keep that in mind, guys. Don't fall for all these rumors. Please don't do it. So, but again, it's always fun to think about it. I'll think about it more as we go along. Any other information comes up. But, guys, I will see you tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. for Newswave. I'll see you then.